Namaste, everyone. Welcome to our 39th session of the lecture series on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Namaste, Maharaj. As usual, we'll have a lecture for an hour, and there will be a Q&A session starting at about 7 p.m. You can hold on to your questions. When the Q&A opens up, please raise your hand through the option or type your question on YouTube, and we'll either mention your question or ask you to unmute and ask the question. As usual, these sessions are recorded. All of them are available on YouTube. Please follow us on YouTube and also check out the recordings on our website. One request, if you're all on YouTube, please press the like button so that at least it reaches the more people who are seekers of spiritual knowledge. And that's how YouTube works. The more likes, the more they recommend the video. So please do that. With that, I'll pass it on to Maharaj to start the 39th.
Thank you, Sanjay, and good morning. Sorry, this is good morning in the morning. This is good evening, of course. We had a session in the morning. Okay, fine. So we'll begin. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidikena yopa kurutam pravram muninam patanjali pranjali ranatosmi stuve patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartrasutrasya bhashyasya pramavivaranasya cha. So now we are resuming this class after a gap of almost 3 weeks. So normally when we resume a class after some gap, I recapitulate some of the portions that we already covered, just to keep your mind fresh to what we are discussing right now, what we discussed in the last session. So we already began with an analysis of human mind. So that's what Yoga Sutra is all about. The human experiences within and coming from outside and our own reaction to those experiences. That's what Patanjali analyzes in this text. And then we began with some of the early sutras of Samadhipada. Technically, Samadhipada is the beginning of the standard printed versions. But what we did was a bit different. We dealt with the earlier sutras of Samadhipada, around 14 sutras, which in a way constitutes a set of definitions of some of the important terms used in the yoga psychology of Patanjali. Then after finishing 14 sutras of the Samadhipada, we actually began the Sadhanapada, which is actually the beginning of the practice of yoga. Sadhana means practice. And then we finished the Vibhudipada, then came to Samadhipada, which we are doing right now. So in the Samadhipada, Patanjali begins with this question. It's a question and also a statement, Atha Yoga Anushasana, means now onwards we will discuss yoga. Henceforth, we are going to have a discussion, or we are going to instruct yoga, which means we are stepping to a new life, which really marks a new evolution in our life, because there is an evolution possible beyond the physical, and that evolution takes place at the spiritual or cultural level. And that's what yoga is all about, really speaking. Evolution at a level beyond the physical, the biological. And then Patanjali defines some of the important terms used here. First of all, he defines yoga. Yoga itself means yoga chitta vritti nirodha. That is the very beginning of the yoga discussion. Yoga means chitta vritti nirodha. So then he goes on explaining what chitta is, what vritti is. Vritti is nothing but the effect of the impact of the residual effect of whatever is left out in our mental system, after after we perform any activity, either speaking a word or any physical activity or thinking a thought, all these are activities at a physical, verbal, or mental level. All these activities will leave in our mental system a residue, and that is called vritti. Of course, it has got different dimensions, different forms that we already discussed. And what is chittam? So that's a central topic. Chittam here means not just mind as understood in modern psychology, but it also includes the entire mental world, the world of human mind, the mental system, which includes many faculties, many functions, and many activities at the psychological level. Thinking, emotions, feelings, memories, speculative thought currents, remembrance, a sense of identity, all these are included in the word chittam. And then after defining different vrittis, we began with the first sutra of Sadhanapada, which begins with the definition of Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhananani Kriya Yoga. That's how it begins. Then Patanjali defines different dimensions of samskaras and vrittis and so on. And then after that, we discuss the Vibhudipada. We discuss the different results produced by yoga practices, which again are not occult or esoteric practices, but rather these all can be explained in the language of modern science that we already discussed in these Sadhanapada and Vibhudipada. Then we came to Samadhipada proper. And one important theme discussed in the Samadhipada, as you may remember, is the science of concentration. That is dharana. And while discussing dharana, we discussed various methods of keeping the mind in a state of stability and steadiness, both at the psychological level and also at the level of our interactions. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upekshanam, Sukha Dukkha, Punya, Punya, Vishayanam, Bhavana, Daka, Chitta, Prasadanam. So it begins the 33rd Sutra of Samadhipada. How we can regulate and scientifically restrain our mind and its functions in our interactions with others, belonging to different temperaments, people with different temperaments we meet in our everyday life situations. How we can remain our mind, how can we keep our mind in a state of stability, tranquility, and peace that we discussed. And then a number of exercises, practices for achieving this mental stability. Pranayama was discussed, this exhalation and inhalation. Prachadana Vidharana Abhyam Va Pranasya, that begins 34th Sutra of Samadhipada. Then again, whenever we experience something transcendental, some kind of an extrasensory perception or something, that also will help us to keep our mind in a state of stability and peace. And maybe first of all get an idea that there is something beyond what we see around us. That is a very important thing. I shall try to emphasize this point. Potentially, of course, we have been discussing and we'll continue that discussion today again. Of course, that's what we are going to begin with today. How do we get indication that we are doing something sensible? When we read a book, when we listen to somebody, when we do something, how do we come to a judgment? How do we make sure that what we are doing or what we are experiencing is really worthwhile in a spiritual sense. This one test. When we think of what we are doing, when we think of what we are experiencing, our mind should be in a state of stability and tranquility. That's an important thing, important criterion that Patanjali is putting forward. So you find Vishayavadi va pravatti utpanna manasasthiti nibandhini. It becomes a cause of steadiness and peace of mind whenever we really get a glimpse of something that goes beyond, something that is beyond the world of the senses and empirical things. How do we know that there is something beyond what we see with our eyes? We read books, we pray, we may listen to lectures, we may discuss philosophy. But unless we can touch it with our hand, using a language, a metaphor, unless you can physically verify that it makes some sense, how can we be sure that we are on the right track? We read many books. If you read the old religious texts of different religions, there are so many things that we cannot scientifically believe. People may not dare to say it's all absolute gibberish, but in our mind we know, and we may place our hand on a book and take oath. Hindus will do, Christians will do, Buddhists will do, everyone will do. It's perfectly okay for one to say, I'm a Hindu or Buddhist or Christian or so on, whatever maybe. Now the point is, how do we connect the world in which we are living with this invisible, maybe imaginary idea of God or spirituality or tranquility or yoga, whatever it is? That's precisely what Patanjali is talking about here. And the glory of Patanjali is not bringing a God into our midst. Remember, Patanjali's system is not agnostic, not atheistic. It is actually theistic system. Patanjali does accept God. And not only that, the greatest of Indian philosophical system, named Advaita, Shankaracharya, he fully accepts, he embraces Patanjali's system, yoga system, and says it has a value, no doubt. If you practice yamas and niyamas, some spiritual disciplines, and by practicing that, you feel a kind of inner tranquility and peace within, and you're able to interact with others around you in a state of harmony and peace and friendship and compassion, then it has a value. That's an important thing. If you practice something and you get terribly irritated, terribly angry with everyone around, then it's certainly not anything spiritual. But if you practice something and it gives you a sense of inner tranquility and peace, and you may not find an angel standing right in front of you talking to you, that you may not see. But even that doesn't really guarantee peace of mind. Many people don't get peace of mind after talking to angels. Many people who claim to have spoken to angels actually become big problems for the rest of the humanity. That is the history of religion. I don't have to tell you, read newspapers every day, you'll understand it. But here, Patanjali takes an entirely different approach. He says, if you stay as a simple law-abiding citizen in your room, in your home, in your village, and practice ahimsa, non-violence, purity of mind, purity of life, contentment, compassion for others, concentrating on something. So, and then if you feel an inexpressible tranquility and peace within, then you transmit that peace to people in your neighborhood as well. And that is real spirituality. God is not dragged into this picture, but Shankaracharya, the great philosopher of India, says that is the beginning of spirituality. That's why Patanjali says Chitta Prasada. Chitta Prasada means practicing spiritual wisdom, spiritual common sense in our everyday life, everyday interactions. Now, he gives a number of options for practicing this discipline with the goal to achieve inner stability and peace and wisdom. And one important discipline that he gives is very important, Ishwar Pranidhanadva. And that is something which every theistic religion of the world will accept. Total surrender. All the way from Augustine's confession to Ramanuja's philosophy of prapatti or saranagati, resignation to God, surrender to God. Or if you read the autobiographical writings of mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila, everywhere you find this idea that if you can resign yourself, your activities and everything to some higher transcendental God idea called Ishvara, then you get peace of mind. But remember what kind of God idea it is. A God idea means the idea of a God who is compassionate towards everyone, even towards those who reject him or deny his existence. It's very interesting. In Yoga and Vedanta, you don't have to accept God or accept his ontological existence to be his devotee. Now, how do you really, it's a big challenge to modern agnostics who criticize religion. They don't have an answer to this. If you accept this Yoga Vedanta idea means Shankaracharya's Advaita and Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga doesn't include prayer to a monotheistic God, but it does include all kinds of inner spiritual disciplines. And then Shankaracharya says, this Ashtanga Yoga makes your mind ready for accepting the presence of a divine reality that is everywhere, present in everything. Once you realize this, then you cannot help being a good human being. You cannot help being compassionate towards people around you. You cannot help looking upon the entire creation as one spiritual family. And when this happens, you feel a kind of inner peace, tranquility, and stability. So today, we are coming to the end of that section of yoga where different disciplines are recommended for bringing tranquility and steadiness of mind. That is sthiti nibandhini. Manasaha sthiti nibandhini. That is, Vyasa uses the term and also Patanjali uses the term. 37th sutra is Vidaraga Vishayam Va Chittam. Vidaraga Vishayam Va Chittam. If you can concentrate on the mind of a person, maybe a saint, a sage, or an angel, or maybe the God in whom you believe, whom you worship, who is free from all kinds of obsessions, likes or dislikes, hatred or attachment. If you can think of the mind or the personality or identity of a great spiritual person and focus on that, then also your mind can become peaceful and calm. Well, I can explain this by giving an opposite example. Suppose, there are many movies today, you can see. Some movies are terribly disturbing, full of violence, all kinds of shocking experiences. You watch it for some time, your mind will be disturbed. So you can really verify that. You can verify it. Terminator series or whatever it is. You just listen to it, your mind will be disturbed. And also some unpleasant performances of music, so-called music, so to speak, Not necessarily you can be, many people may not call it music, but there are different performances which could sometimes be wrongly or rightly called music by people. Now, if you listen to that, your mind gets disturbed, agitated. So this is one example. It's a negative example. So a negative example is a proof that the positive example is also correct. Now, similarly, if by listening to disturbing performances or by concentrating on wrong characters, people with wrong ideas can make you disturbed, then certainly concentration on great people who are embodiments of greatness and compassion. Let's think of the mind of a Buddha. That's all I can say. A great commentators like Vijnana Bhikshu, who wrote Yoga Bhashya Vartigam, he gives the example of great sages of ancient India, because Vijnana Bhikshu wrote centuries ago. So he wrote in his own cultural, social context. In today's world, let us say, you think of the mind of a Buddha, the heart of a Buddha, or some saint whom you believe, or anyone in your tradition, or whatever tradition you have. You think of that person and you immediately start thinking about calmness, stability, compassion, goodness, kindness, and so on. And your mind also becomes, at least temporarily, steady, calm, and quiet and tranquil. Just as your mind becomes disturbed when you think of some disturbing events, your mind also becomes stable and steady and tranquil and peaceful when you concentrate on the mind or characteristics of some great saintly figures. I can read from Vijnana Bhikshu. Vijnana Bhikshu says, Chitta Sthairya Karanam Parikarmantaram Aha Vidaraga Vishimva Chittam Vyachaste Vidaidi Vidaragam Sanagādhīnām Chittam Tadeva Alambanam Tenu Viraktam Tadharanaya Tadagarada Yogi Chittam Viraktam Sadalambanantare Api Sthiti Yogyadam Labhade Ityartha. Now it means Sanaga, Sanaga, Sanandana, Sanat Kumara. These are great saints of ancient India. Well, if you read their stories, if you read about them, great sages who is silently meditating in a cave or in a hermitage, or other times when they were not meditating, they were wandering everywhere. Whenever they met somebody who could put question to them, they talked to them about God, they talked to them about meditation, they talked to them about compassion for everyone. They talk to them about this seeing the presence of the divine everywhere without any distinction. Now, these are the great sages whose names are mentioned by Vijnana Bhikshu in his book, Yoga Bhashya Vartikam. So he says, and give an example. Think of the heart of these great saints of ancient India. In modern context, if you belong to another religious tradition, you can think of the great saints of your tradition, who did great things, good things, who the embodiments of compassion and kindness and harmony and tranquility. Then also your mind can become steady and peaceful and tranquil. This is another way to do that. So different options are given here. Vidaraga Varatyukta Vishyabilashaka Vyasa Sukadeha Yesham Yachittam Tadeva Vishaya Alambanam Yasya Vidaraga Vishya Tadhoktam Chittam Vidaraga Vishya Chittam. So those whose minds were totally free from any kind of extreme obsession, raga, dvesha, extreme obsession, extreme liking, extreme attachment, and its opposite, extreme aversion to something else, totally free from all this, totally free from all these obsessions or attachment to sensual objects, always composed, tranquil, and peace. Think of those people and their mind, their thoughts, and meditate on them. That also is a kind of dharana, an exercise on concentration. This is the implication of this 37th sutra. So this is one option. So everyone can practice in modern times meditation on the characteristics, the mind, or the personality of some great human beings who are saintly, who are saints of saintly character, who had only a word of blessing for everyone, who only lived only to be a blessing to others. Such personalities should be taken as an object of concentration. That is also one kind of a dharana. Pure science, science of human mind. So this is an example. Another important sutra is Sukma Nidra Jnanalambanam Va. Another, or having for its support the experience of a dream. It requires some explanation. I shall explain this. It needs some explanation. I had to make it simple. What it says is, you should have some kind of a supporting object, and that as an object of concentration, and that object of concentration can be an experience you had in a dream, or an experience that people normally have in deep sleep. The traditional commentators will tell you what it is like. Suppose you are doing, let us say you're worshipping. You are engaged in worshipping the Hindu social background. The commentators will tell you, suppose you are doing puja of Shiva, Vishnu, or any deity. Or maybe in a Christian context, you can think of your praying in a church, or Jewish context, you can think of being engaged in some holy ritual. In Buddhist tradition, you can think of maybe you are meditating in a Buddhist place. This is in dream, let us say in dream, remember. Now, we cannot have a dream experience unless you are prepared mentally for that dream in your waking state. Our dream experiences can never be the same that we have in waking state. But our dream experiences will be always somehow related to our waking state experiences. So that is an important point. This is discussed in many other Vedanta scriptures. Now, suppose you dream, you're dreaming about, you're dreaming of going through some experience in a holy place where you're meditating, you're performing some holy ritual or whatever it is. And then you wake up. Then suppose you can continue thinking of the dreams you had. It will have a deeper effect. That's why when you are dreaming, when you are at a conscious level, if somebody can read out a poem or a text lesson to you, you may remember much more forcefully than when you listen in waking state. If you're half asleep, it's a kind of dream, and if you happen to listen to something clearly well, that you may remember and that may get registered in the mental system. Now, dream is something like that. In dream, we completely identified with that experience, because in waking state, the five senses of perception are connecting with various objects. When you are in waking state, when you're walking or when you're sitting somewhere, you may be seeing things with your eyes, hearing maybe the sound of a car with your ears, touching a book with your sense of touch. And people frequently eat these chocolates or maybe the chewing gum when they read. So sense of taste, sense of hearing, sense of sight, and sense of smell. People sometimes smoke when they are reading. So you can see sense of smell, sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of sight, all are included. So the mind is, mental focus is distracted in 5 directions in waking state. When dream state, actually, physically speaking, the 5 senses of perception are inactive, but mind is active. And when mind alone is active, when mind itself projects dream experiences, you see things at the mental level, you hear things at the mental level, you smell things at the mental level, you taste things at mental level in dream. So what really happens is that dream experience is much more intense. And then you wake up. You're doing puja or you're being meditating in a holy place and you wake up. Patanjali says, and if you can concentrate on that experience that you had in dream state, that is one way of connecting with the transcendent, because you didn't do anything at the waking state, but in dream you had something, and that memory remains the mental system. That can be an object, a supporting object for concentration, for dharana. Another example is given, Swapna Nidra Jnanalampanam. Here, according to Vajaspadi, Swapna Jnanam here refers to divine image, stream in a dream. That you may have seen, suppose you, in dream, you see a saint appearing in front of you and you wake up immediately. For some time, your mind will be much more intensely engrossed in that vision that you had in dream. Because dream experiences are deeper, because it all intensely experienced, because the mind alone is involved. So, or in deep sleep, when you wake up from deep sleep, dreamless sleep, that is deep sleep, when you wake up, you feel total restfulness. Because in deep sleep or dreamless sleep, you don't see any object, you don't have any experience. There is absolutely no object at all. Therefore, when you wake up, you feel a great joy, tranquility, peace, and calmness. That's why complete rest is possible only in deep sleep. That is Sushupti, or that is dreamless sleep or deep sleep. In dreams, you are not getting complete rest. Dreams can sometimes take the form of nightmares, and that can make people tired, exhausted, frightened, trembling. That could happen. But in dreamless sleep, deep sleep, you're always engrossed in your own self, calm, quiet, tranquil state. You think of that after waking up. That is also one way of achieving tranquility and peace. One important thing to remember is, in all these dharana options, you are getting a glimpse of the transcendent. I mean, you are getting a glimpse of something that goes beyond empirical. That experience may not last for long, but a glimpse of that, the possibility of something existing beyond the body-mind complex, that gives us a sense of steadiness, calmness, and quietude. This is the thesis of Patanjali. Here also Patanjali is, of course, Vyasa doesn't write anything, there is no elaborate commentary, but Vijnana Bhikshu in his Yoga Vartika, he says, Tathaiva Parikarmantramaha Swapna Nidra Jnanalambanam va Swapna Jnanam Swapna Rupam Jnanam Tadalambanagam Chittam Prapancha Jnane Swapna Drishtimat Chittam Iti Yavat Tatha Dirgha Swapnamimam Vidhi Dirgham Va Chitta Vibhramam. So very important, here is something very important idea is given here. This anyone can practice. It is linked to Vedanta. Now, everything in Swapna, everything that we saw in Swapna is now gone. That's what you experience when you wake up. What you thought To be real is no more. So Swapna experience is used in a different way to acquire tranquility and peace. See, you saw in dream, you experience, you have got a lottery, you have suddenly become a billionaire. Very wonderful. And then when you wake up, it's not there. So suppose you can imagine your own life and all that you experience in this empirical world as a long dream. That's why, Dirgha Swapnamimam Vidhi Dirgham Va Chitta Vibhramam. Iyam Cha Drishti. That is a very unique statement from Vijnana Bhikshu. If you can think of your whole life, all the experiences around you, as if you consider them as a long dream, which you obviously understand to be unreal when you wake up, then that itself, that practice can make you calm and quiet. That's an important thing. So 2 examples are given. One is, in dream you're worshipping a god, or you're meditating in a temple or a church, or you're getting a vision of an angel, and you wake up, you think of that transcendental experience. That is one way of making the mind calm and quiet, because you get a glimpse of the transcendental. That is one. Another interpretation that comes specially from Vijnana Bhikshu. That is very unique. He's bringing Vedanta into this. He says, Dirgha Swapnamimam Vidhi, Dirgham Va Chitta Vibhramam. You understand this whole life, the whole world is nothing but a long dream. No, really it's a fact. Suppose you buy $100 ticket, go to Disneyland, 3 hours, you spend there. For 3 hours, actually you forget the world outside. For 3 hours, you are living in a different world. This happens when you see a great movie. Great movies, not the violent, unrealistic, gibberish. When you see them, it's all absolutely a trick to make money, to grab your money. That you know very well. Nobody is cheated by that. But when you see a great movie, which is so realistic, which actually puts a mirror in front of you, you can see the reality of real life in great novels, great poems, great short stories, great works of art. I'm talking about great works of art by great masters of literature or artists. They can make you forget the world in which you are living, and they can create an artificial alternate world in front of you, and you inhabit in that world for 3 hours, as you do in Disneyland. 3 hours. When you come out, you find Disneyland is all absolutely 3 hours dream, 3 hours unreal. Mithya, Vedanta is called Mithya or Maya. Mithya and Maya are not totally unreal, but they appear to be real for some time. So there should be a substance behind it. I mean, even the Disneyland, there are many objects, many equipments which created this illusion. So those objects are there even after you come out of it. So also when you come out to the movie hall, the screen is there. The screen is there. The projector may be there. Only those events are not happening. So there is a substratum. The screen or the institutes or the equipments in a Disneyland scenario. So, but still, when you come out of it, you know what you saw was all dream. Now, can you extend that 3 hours experience in a movie theater to, let us say, to 100 years of your life? So we are actually experiencing a dream that is 100 years long. That is what Vijnana Bhikshu says. The Dirgha Swapnam means long dream, 100 years long. I'm talking about those who live for 100 years, maybe 80 years, 70 years, 90 years, whatever. So our human life human empirical experiences constitute a dream lasting for 90 years. That's the life of a 90-year-old man who lives for 90 years. Now, it's a fact from a higher standpoint, because dream is not absolutely unreal, because when you're dreaming, it is real. Its unreality becomes obvious when you come out of it. So it was there for some time, but it won't be there all the time. And that is true for this world also. After 90 years, it won't be there. Before you began living in this world 90 years ago, it was not there. That's why Vijnana Bhikshu say, Dirgha Sopnamimam Vidhi Dirgham Va Chitta Vibhramam. It's only a mental illusion. Here Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta is brought into the picture. That's why Advaita Vedanta, if you read Shankaracharya's philosophy, in fact, that can be the greatest possible tool that a psychologist can think of for counseling all problems. Advaita is the best tool for all psychological problems, because Advaita tells you all the problems are because you superimpose permanence on the impermanent. You understand you understand the fact which you know really, but you forget that it is impermanent. So you just change the picture, change the perspective, and then you are free from it. That's why Vijnana Bhikshu says, Yancha Drishtihi. Of course, he continues. This is with regard to dream. About Sushupti, as I mentioned, when you wake up, in Vedanta scriptures use this stereotype statement. Aham Sukham Aswapsam means the only thing you can say when you come out of a long, dreamless, deep sleep is, I had a good sleep. Now, that tranquility and peace and calmness you concentrate upon as a practice of dharana. Then also you can get stability and peace. But of these two, the Swapna element is much more scientific, and is a very, very great example. You understand the whole world, whole life. Dirgha Swapnamimam Vidhi. You understand, literally means, look here, you understand. You look upon this life, this world, as a long dream. Dirgham va chitta vibhramam. Or you can think of this world or this life as a long illusion of the mind. Long illusion. In other words, then you may go to the hospital for treatment. You may work hard to get a good job. You may do all your duties, everything. But at the same time, when there's a problem, you will solve the problem, but you won't be shocked. The problem will not shock you. The problem will not be a devastating experience to you. Because Vijnana Bhikshu tells you that it's all a long dream. Dirgham va chitta vibhramam. It's a long illusion of the mind, a long dream. So this is a very, very famous sutra, because it brings in the Advaitic concept of Maya or Mithya into in an analysis of the human mind. Remember, this is also interpreted differently by Buddhist scholars. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this series of lectures, in Yogacara system, that's one of the idealist schools of Buddhism. I mean, Yogacara, so-called Vijnanavada is another name, and Shunyavada. Shunyavada was mainly expounded by Nagarjuna in his Madhyamika Karika, his well-known commentary by Chandragirti. And then Vijnanavada, called Yogacara system, the other school of Mahayana, was expounded by a number of scholars like Dignaga, Vasubandhu, many others. Lankavadara Sutram is a famous book, and there are many other books written by Dignaga and others. Now, according to them, the Yoga Sutra, this sutra can be interpreted differently, because according to Vijnanavada system, the objective world has no existence at all, not even relative existence. Everything is moving, everything is momentary. Everything is momentary. So there are two stages in the development of Vijnanavada. One is Alaya Vijnanavada and Pravritti Vijnanavada. The former school, Alaya Vijnanavada, accepts there is such a subject is real, but there is objective, or this the continuous stream of objective empirical experiences are unreal. The later school is called Pravritti Vijnanavada, which accepts the unreality of both. So in the Yogacara system, the objective empirical world is dismissed as totally momentary or unreal. Just like different movies put together create the illusion of things moving, standing for a long time, like that. So once you understand the momentariness, what's called kshanikata, or kshanikata means momentariness, is an important principle in the cardinal doctrines of Buddhism. Once you understand that, then why should you worry about anything? Worry is only because you don't realize or you forget the fact it is momentary. Actually, it's momentary. The moment you see, of course, Advaita accepts this, but Advaita says behind the momentary, there's a substratum which is absolutely real. Because change cannot be logically understood without the background of something which is changeless. Suppose you have two trains moving with equal speed side by side. If you are sitting two of you sitting on two trains moving on the same speed, you won't feel the movement. You feel the movement only when one train is moving, because the platform is not moving. So you feel the train is moving forward. Just because there is something which is not moving on the other side. Of course, it is seen to be moving backward, but that everyone knows to be unreal. But in the two trains moving the same direction in the same speed is different. The movement cannot be experienced. So momentariness becomes logically feasible only against the background of something which is not momentary. That is Vedantic's view, Advaita's view. But this is an important truth. And when you realize that everything is momentary, then why should you feel unsteady in mind? Why you feel instability? Why don't you feel tranquil, peaceful, tranquil all the time? Because there is nothing to worry about, nothing to be concerned about. So this is the importance of the sutra. And the 39th one is Yatha Abhimata Dhyanat Va. That is also an important sutra. This sutra also is explained by Vijnana Bhikshu in his own way. I shall try to, it's a very precious part of Vijnana Bhikshu's work here. He says, image worship. In fact, this sutra in a way contains the philosophy of image worship. By meditating on any object which is designed. So suppose in Indian Hindu image worship, it's a very scientific process. The one who makes the image should practice a lot of spiritual disciplines for 41 days, maybe longer. He should get a special initiation to a mantra, and you should practice the rituals of meditation, non-violence, vegetarianism. You should not eat only once a day. Many traditions, when the person is engaged in this preparing an image, and at different stages, he should practice certain not only he, but all his assistants also. It takes a long time sometimes to build a good image. There is a whole science behind it. There are several books in Sanskrit written on that subject. And then there are certain characteristics stipulated in these books, according to which you have to make the image. Its shape, its everything for different deities. Mantras will differ according to the deity whose image you are making. And that image is finally ready. You meditate upon it. Now, an image is not God. An image is only a tool for concentration. That is a spiritual psychology behind image worship. Hinduism never tells you the image is God. Hinduism tells you that image is an object, a tool for worship. How can you turn your mind away from terrible things happening around you? In ancient time, there'll be wars, conflicts, and so on, natural calamities. So one should focus one's mind and senses from various distractions and focus on the presence of the divine within yourself. But that's not possible. So to begin with, you need an external focus. And that external focus is an image. So this particular sutra I shall read, which is I think the sutra is, I think it is 39th sutra. Yatha abhimata dhyana dva. Another option. Abhimata dhyana. Something that you like. If you like the image of a Buddha, meditating on that Buddha image will make your mind calm and quiet. If you want to meditate upon the image of Lord Krishna, or maybe Christ means the cross. Actually, when we go to a place of worship and when we sit there silently, when we think of the life and sacrifices of a great spiritual person who lived maybe thousands of years ago, we are actually recreating his image in our mind. And if you have some kind of a tool in front of you which reminds you of that person, then you are actually recreating the image, the prototype of that person in your mind. That's the real purpose of a place of worship. The problem is those who deny the need for an object for concentration, they can differentiate God on the one hand, and they themselves together forming a contract, and the rest of humanity alien to all of you. That means you and your God, all wonderful friends in good terms, but others are others. But if you think of the divine essentially present in everyone's heart, and everyone can manifest the presence of the divine within his heart by focusing his mind towards that, by meditating, then what happens? Whose image or whose personality are you meditating upon? If you meditate on the life of a man like Buddha or Christ, then naturally you will have something which Buddha and Christ had when they were living in this world. Compassion, goodness, and so on. So you meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, who looked upon all religions as true. So if you meditate upon a person, then the characteristics of that image or the prototype of that, for the object on which you meditate, that will naturally manifest in your heart. That's why in Veda, in Hindu scripture, there is a statement, yada yatha bhavayadi tad bhavati. As you meditate upon whatever you meditate upon, you imagine that you become. Now here, Abhimatam means something that you like. There are two types of images mentioned here according to other commentators. One is internal, the other is external. Internal means you can meditate upon your Ajna chakra or different chakras. That is a meditative process according to this Chakra method, which is a different subject, which beyond the scope. Okay. Yoga Yajnavalkyam is a text in which the dharana on different chakras, chakras are explained, but I have no plan to go to that. The other kind of worship, for example, incarnations of God, angels, saints, great sages, you can meditate upon the external images. You can make an image of Buddha, try anything like, keep on your table. Every time you look at the picture, you don't say Buddha is sitting there. You only smile, image is sitting there. But image will take your mind to the real Buddha who lived 2,600 years ago. The image of Christ or the picture of Christ will take you all the way 2,000 years behind and will make you think of the sacrifices, the renunciation, the compassion of Christ. So here, the image is not equated to God. The image is a symbol, a tool, a help that will take your mind towards the real divine personality behind the image. So that's why here, Vijnana Bhikshu Yoga Bhashavartiga, he has written something interesting. Vyasa is not very elaborate in writing commentaries on this sutras. Yadeva abhimadam tadeva dhyayit. Meditation should be an object that you like, that you desire, that you should respect, revere, treat with great sanctity and sacredness and reverence. That should be your object of meditation. It may be a book, a sacred book also can be. But you know, because the book contains some great truths, the book doesn't become God. The book will remind you of the great teachings of that book. That's right. The book can be burned. God is not. So people frequently misunderstand image worship. That's because they don't understand it. They don't try to understand it. And easy to criticize. So this is an important thing to remember. Yadeva abhimadam tadeva dhyayit. This is Vyasa. Yatra labdhasthiti kamentrapi sthitibadam labhade ityartha. When the mind has attained stability, you know what happens? Yatra labdhasthitikam anyatrapi sthitibadam bhaved. So when you are able to concentrate on that beautiful image which you have placed in front of you with great reference and respect, and you are able to focus on it completely, then that mind will be able to focus on anything that you want, and that mind will automatically slowly grow from vikshipta state to ekagra state. Remember, you have to remember this the Panja Bhumika that Vyasa explained in the beginning of the sutra. Kshiptam, Mudam, Vikshiptam, Ekagram, Niruddham. Ekagra state, that's the fourth state. That is the first advanced state in yoga practice. Concentration. So that's why Vijnana Bhikshu says, Yatha abhimadam dhyanadva kim bakuna yadeva abhimadam harigaram uchyadigam tevado dhyayit tadeva dhyayit tasmadabi dhyana tatra labdhasthidigasya chittasya anyatrabi viveka paryanta sukshmeshu vinaiva sadhanantaram sthiti yogyata bhavati ityartha. So what happens, you know, once you are able to concentrate on some divine auspicious image, then you will be able to develop that concentration elsewhere also. And once your concentration advances further and further, mind becomes stable and steady. And then along with this steadiness and stability, Vyasa says that the earlier commentaries, mind also becomes calm and quiet, and you will be able to live with others in a state of harmony, compassion, and peace. So remember, Vijnana Bhikshu has taken many things from traditional and philosophical Hinduism. So actually, he's throwing light in the scientific, so the scientific aspects of image worship. Image is a tool for concentration. Image is not God. Image is a tool for concentration, and that image should be something auspicious, something that you revere. Anything. There are many people, in different traditions who look upon great saints and sages and mystics and great men and women who are embodiments of divine qualities, godly qualities, and they look upon them with a sense of reverence, devotion, auspiciousness. That can be one way of practicing concentration. When you practice that concentration, our mind becomes calm and quiet and steady, and that calmness and steadiness will express as compassion, harmony, peaceful interaction with others, because that divine is present in everything. But just a statement is not enough. You should be able to manifest it in our life. For that, Patanjali says, Yatha abhimata dhyanatva. You should be able to concentrate on something, any object of concentration or tool for meditation, that you like, that you consider sacred, sanctified, and auspicious. Okay, now we have interaction. You are most welcome. After almost 3 weeks of holidays, I'm sure you will have many questions to ask. Thank you. Namaskar. Yeah.
Hari Om Maharaj.
Please.
Maharaj, so I had a question regarding the last thing that you were talking about. You were saying that image is a symbol, a tool that takes your mind towards the reality, but it is not the reality itself, right?
Yeah.
So is there a time when this tool becomes unnecessary? And when does one know that they are sticking too much to the tool and forgetting, like, for example, when people were getting very ritualistic, I'm guessing that is when Buddha came and told people that this is not what the Vedas were meant to do. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I understand, that people were getting very ritualistic with respect to the Vedas and were more focused on the sacrificial part of it. So when does this tool or this crutch, which takes us towards divinity, become too much of a crutch?
Yeah, it is a social problem, not a spiritual problem.
Mm-hmm.
Social problem is, people who practice the rituals, who officiate these rituals in temples and places of worship, they have their own interests, economic interests, prestige, social status, and so on. So all these combined, and also a kind of monopolization of these rights to practice rituals, all these may have resulted in taking the real spirit out of this practice. Now, one important thing in the puja tradition itself, first of all, you are actually inviting the divine energy that is present everywhere to manifest on that image that you have placed in front of you. And then you utter a set of mantras. Actually, it's very much like you invite a highly respected guest to your home, giving that guest a good place to sit and offering him food or whatever is, of course, flowers, garlands, and things, sandal paste, according to old tradition. So actually the whole worship, the whole dynamics of worship is similar to inviting a respectful guest to your home and honoring him, and then that when that guest also goes away, finally, the mantras, you avahana is there. So it's just like the Gayatri avahana is there, and also the Uttame Shikare Devi, you request Gayatri to go back to your place, divine abode. So you invite and you respect and you pray, and then you ask the divine to retire to its place, it's everywhere. So all the mantras are more or less, they resemble the statements, your conversation to your respectable guest who enters your home. You please come here, you sit here. I should not attend those mantras in this conversation, because Sanskrit mantras. And you please come here, you please sit here, kindly accept this water, and kindly accept this sandal paste, kindly accept this little humble food that I give. And this is the whole thing is like that. Now, obviously, the image doesn't eat anything, So the point is, it is just how we treat other fellow human beings with great respect and reverence. That reverence is given to the divine, because ultimately the purpose of every ritual is to go beyond that ritual. The purpose of every temple is ultimately to transcend the temple. The purpose of every place of worship is eventually to see and feel the presence of the divine outside the temple. But frequently, when it becomes an institution, when religion degenerates into an institution, as it happens in all traditions, every tradition, then frequently this aspect may be forgotten, but still it's very much there. That's why there are so many saints and sages who realize this truth, who come from time to time to remind us of this. So that's an important thing to remember. So every ritual is designed to take you beyond itself. You go to primary school, not to stay there for 25 years, but to get out of that primary school, then go to higher school, maybe eventually to college and university in course of time. So it's a matter of evolution. And eventually the purpose of every ritual is to outgrow rituals and to see the presence of divine in everyone around you. That's an important thing. The divine present everywhere in everything. So this is at the level of our attitude. In our own internal life, eventually our purpose is to merge the secular with the spiritual, so that every activity becomes a spiritual activity. This is eventually, if we go deeper into the lives and experiences of the greatest mystics and saints of different traditions, at some point or somewhere you can see this happening. Okay, but this may not be fully accepted. But let's see. Even all the mantras, if you closely analyze the meaning of the mantras, it is a prayer to the divine present everywhere. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, thank you.
There are no more questions, Maharaj, but I have one from my end. So you talked about dreamless state, the deep sleep. How can we improve that? I mean, that's a good rested way. Then you have more energy to practice and live when you are out of that sleep state. Is that a good way to sleep? Is the deep life, is the dreamless state, sleep is the goal? Is it a good goal to have the dreamless sleep?
Yeah, actually, when an old man, young people also these days, with more common among them than old people who complain about lack of sleep, they're actually complaining about lack of deep sleep. Not they don't want dreams, because dreams can be nightmares depending upon what they do during the waking state. So dreamless deep sleep is the goal of everyone, and that's the only way for us to be in a state of natural restfulness. That can be achieved by the practice of detachment, non-attachment, because it is our attachment, as I mentioned earlier, in seeing the permanent in what is essentially impermanent. Our attachment is what actually stands in the way of our getting good, dreamless, deep sleep, actually speaking. Because this attachment creates disturbance, thoughts, concerns, anxieties, worries. So if you can, even this, the great statement that what Jnana Bhikshu says, if you can think of everything as an impermanent experience, like a dream, then you need not run away from life, but you can really appreciate the real fact that everything is essentially impermanent. Secondary. Then why worry? Why concern? Actually, behind every extreme anxiety, there is the feeling of it is something that really matters. It is something permanent. When a problem occurs, we wrongly attribute permanence to that problem. The problem will be there all the time. The fear of the permanence of the problem is what really makes us anxious about finding a solution to that problem. The problem itself is impermanent as everything else. So that enables us to practice non-attachment. Yeah. So thank you for the questions. Bobby, no questions?
Not today, Maharaj. I'm basking in the glow of the discourse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So very wonderful. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tatsat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
You, Swamiji.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Maharaj.
Swamiji.
Namaste.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.